Level 1, The Apprentice. The van leaves at 7, not 7:15, 7. You learn this on the first day by almost missing it and by watching your supervisor's expression when you climb in at 7:02 and understanding from that expression that 7:02 is not meaningfully different from 7:15 in the context of what the expression is communicating. You don't miss the van again. Your supervisor is a woman named Diana who has been in HVAC for 16 years and who carries the specific calm of someone for whom the complicated is routine and the routine is habit. She doesn't explain things unless you ask. If you ask, she explains clearly. If you ask the same thing twice, she explains it again without patience or impatience. She has no investment in whether you learn. She has high standards for whether the work gets done. The work begins before you understand the work. You carry equipment from the van. You pass tools to Diana when she asks for them, which requires knowing which tools she means when she says what she says, which requires learning the names, which requires asking and being told and forgetting and asking again. The vocabulary of the trade is specific, and the specificity is functional. A manometer is not a pressure gauge in the way that Diana uses the words. They measure pressure. They are not the same instrument, and asking for one when she means the other produces a correction that is delivered once. The first system you work on is a domestic split-unit air conditioner in a house that is unreasonably hot because the system has been unreasonably not working for 3 days. The homeowner is standing in the kitchen with the specific urgency of someone who has been waiting for this moment. Diana looks at the indoor unit and the outdoor unit, and she touches the refrigerant line, and she reads the manufacturer plate, and she asks you 3 questions about what you observe. You observe what you can, she observes what's there. The gap between those 2 things is the gap you'll spend the next several years closing. The fault is a low refrigerant charge from a slow leak at a flare fitting that has been vibrating loose for 2 years. Diana finds it in 40 minutes. She fixes it in 20. The homeowner's expression when cold air comes out of the vents is an expression you'll see 10,000 times in this career. It never gets old. That's the thing about fixing something that was making someone uncomfortable. It returns something to them. The return is immediate and visible, and you're the one who returned it. Level 2. The Junior Technician. 18 months in, and you're qualified to work on systems independently. Not the complex ones, the maintenance ones, the service calls that require trained hands and an understanding of what healthy looks like so that unhealthy is recognizable. You service units alone. The van is the company's. The tools are borrowed from the company's store. Your own toolkit is small and growing because the tool purchases of a junior technician are calculated carefully against a wage that doesn't allow for carelessness. Air conditioning maintenance is underestimated by everyone outside the trade, by clients who think they're paying for someone to clean a filter, by people in other trades who see it as simple work. What it actually is, a systematic inspection of a system that controls the temperature and air quality of the space it serves and whose failure can be uncomfortable, expensive, and in specific cases, dangerous. You approach every service visit with this understanding. Not every system is hiding something. Some systems are exactly what they present as. The value of the systematic inspection is that it doesn't distinguish. You make your first mistake of consequence. A commercial refrigeration unit in a restaurant where you've serviced the condensing unit and replaced a contactors relay and reconnected power and the system is started correctly and you've signed the job sheet and driven away. The restaurant calls an hour later because the system is making a sound it wasn't making before. You go back, the vibration isolation mounts that you moved to access the contactor have been replaced slightly off their position and the compressor is transmitting directly to the cabinet. You correct it. You add the check to your personal checklist, which is the document that every good technician develops from their mistakes and that contains everything that's not in the official procedure, because it's not in the official procedure until someone has the specific experience that you just had. Level 3. The Qualified Technician. 3 years in, and the range of what you can diagnose has grown into a different category from where you started. You work across residential and light commercial, split systems, multi-split systems, rooftop package units, VRF systems with their specific and complex diagnostic requirements. The refrigeration cycle is not something you think about anymore. It's something you operate within the way you operate within gravity.
The principles are there when you need them and invisible when you don't. Your diagnostic approach has developed its own character. You don't start with the component that failed most recently. You start with the symptom, and you build the fault tree outward from the symptom until the tree produces a node that corresponds to a testable hypothesis. You test the hypothesis. If it's confirmed, you found the fault. If it's not, you prune that branch and extend another. This process is not slow. With experience, the tree builds faster than the description suggests. The experienced technician looks at a system and doesn't see the tree consciously. They see the fault because the tree has already run in the background. You're also developing the client communication that nobody teaches, not the technical explanation, the translation of the technical explanation into language that gives the client the information they need to make the decision they need to make, without the information they don't need that would confuse rather than illuminate. This is a skill separate from the technical one, and it develops through getting it wrong. The client who looked confused, the client who made a decision you subsequently understood they would have made differently with better information from you. You adjust. You get better at the translation.
Level 4. The Service Team Lead. 5 years. Your company restructures, and you're offered the team lead role for the residential service team. 4 technicians, a dispatcher, a portion of the client base that is yours to manage and maintain. The transition from being the technician to being the person responsible for the technicians is the same transition that appears in every skilled trade at this stage. The skills that made you good at the work are the foundation for the new role. They're not the role. Managing a service team means managing the things that fall between the scheduled calls. The callback where a technician fixed the presenting fault and didn't find the underlying cause, and now the client is on the phone. The team member whose paperwork is consistently incomplete in ways that create administrative problems downstream. The client whose expectations were set by a conversation you weren't in, and that produce a reality you're now responsible for matching. These are not technical problems. They require different tools from the toolbox, and the toolbox is the one you've been building since you first missed the van. You mentor the newest apprentice, not formally, in the way that Diana mentored you. High standards without invested interest. Clear explanation when asked. Correction once. You hear Diana in your own approach, and you find this appropriate. You also handle your first warranty dispute, a system installed by your company 12 months prior that has developed a fault that the manufacturer attributes to installation and that your records suggest is a component failure. The investigation involves your installation records, the manufacturer's technical team, and a client who has been without air conditioning in August and whose patience is not unlimited. You resolve it by being the person in the room with the most thorough documentation and the clearest account of what happened. The documentation is yours. The habit of documentation came from the personal checklist that came from the vibration mounts that came from the restaurant. Everything connects. Level 5. The Senior Technician and Specialist. 8 years. The work has evolved toward complexity. Commercial refrigeration, large-scale HVAC in buildings that have BMS systems running the controls and where the fault might be in the mechanical system or might be in the building management software that controls it, and diagnosing correctly requires understanding both. You've done the Advanced Refrigeration course, the BMS integration training, the VRF certification that the manufacturer requires, and that has produced a depth of understanding of variable refrigerant flow systems that most technicians in your region don't have. The specialist knowledge has a market. Other companies call yours when they have systems they can't diagnose. You attend as a consultant on 3 occasions. The fee charged for these visits is different from the standard service rate, and the difference is in the specific knowledge that resolved the fault and that the calling company's technicians couldn't apply. You note this. You've also become the person who trains, not apprentices only, the qualified technicians who are expanding their range. You develop a training session for the team on refrigerant handling that the company formalizes and delivers to every new technician. The session is yours. The methodology is the one that Diana demonstrated without describing. Observe, ask questions, wait for the observation to produce understanding rather than delivering the understanding in place of it. A commercial client offers you a permanent role, in-house facilities technician. Better salary, regular hours, no van schedule. You decline because the variety of the service work is what makes the work interesting, And because you understand by this point that what keeps a technician developing is the range of problems the work produces. The in-house role solves one system's problems. The service work solves every system's problems. The difference is the difference between a specialist and a generalist, and you are a generalist who has chosen to be a specialist in specific areas, and the combination is what makes you difficult to replace. Level 6, the Contracts Manager. 11 years. The company's contracts division. You manage the maintenance contracts for commercial clients, 37 sites, a team of 4 technicians, an annual revenue figure that requires a spreadsheet rather than a mental estimate. The contracts work is the work of keeping, not fixing what broke, keeping what works from breaking. Preventative maintenance schedules, seasonal commissioning, the documentation that demonstrates to a commercial client that their HVAC systems are being looked after and that their investment in the maintenance contract is being honored. Commercial clients are not like residential clients. They have facilities managers who know what they're asking for and procurement processes that evaluate whether they're getting it. You develop a reporting format for the contracts clients that gives them the information they need to manage their budgets and their expectations and their decision-making about capital expenditure on aging systems. The format is yours. It didn't exist before you created it. It becomes the standard format for the contracts division, and you don't notice this has happened until a new contracts manager from another company mentions that your company's client reporting is the best they've seen in the region. You also start to understand the business of HVAC, not the technical business, the actual business. The margin on contracts versus service calls, the way labor costs and parts costs and vehicle costs interact, the pricing decisions that look arbitrary from the outside and that are anything but. The company's owner talks through the financials with you on one occasion, and what you understand from the conversation is that running this company requires the same diagnostic thinking as servicing a system. Inputs, outputs, pressures, losses. The principal transfers. Level 7, the Operations Director. 14 years, Operations Director. You manage all field operations, 73 technicians across 3 depots, fleet of 41 vehicles, a training function, a quality assurance program, a health and safety responsibility that extends to everything that happens in the field, and that is the part of the role that carries the most serious consequence for failure. The operations director doesn't touch systems. You know this going in, and you discover what it costs in practice. The work was the anchor of the career, the hands on the pipe, the manometer reading, the moment when the diagnosis resolves from a set of symptoms into a specific fault that has a specific solution. That is gone, and in its place is the management of the infrastructure that produces that moment for 73 other people. You have to find a way to be motivated by the infrastructure rather than the instance, and you find the way over the course of 18 months. You build the training program that the company has never had formally, not the manufacturer certifications, the company's own program. The way a junior technician develops into a qualified one within this specific company with its specific client base and its specific standards. You build it from the personal checklist and the restaurant vibration mount, and the first time you passed Diana a tool she didn't ask for, and from everything between then and now. Level 8, the company owner. 20 years. The previous owner retires and the management buyout that has been a background conversation for 3 years becomes a foreground one, and then a legal process, and then a fact. Your name is now the name above the door. The responsibility and the asset and the 41 vehicles and the 73 technicians are all at the same level of reality. Running the company is running a system, not metaphorically. The inputs and outputs and pressures and losses that the previous owner explained are now yours to manage. You apply the same discipline to the business that you applied to the diagnosis. What is the symptom? What does the symptom suggest about the underlying condition? What is the test that confirms or eliminates the hypothesis? The thinking transfers because it was always the same thinking. You still go to site occasionally, not because you need to, because the site is where the work is, and the work is what the company exists to do, and the person who runs the company should periodically stand in front of the thing the company exists to do and remember what it is. You're on site one morning with an apprentice who is on week 3. The system is a rooftop package unit on a commercial building. The fault is intermittent. The apprentice is doing what week 3 apprentices do. looking at what's visible and hoping that what's wrong is also visible. You watch them for a moment, and then you ask 3 questions about what they observe. They observe what they can. They tell you what they see. You remember standing next to Diana in a house that was unreasonably hot. You remember the gap between what you observed and what she observed. You remember the gap closing over years. You begin closing it for this person.